Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another session of Focus on Liberia on the Marketplace, where we talk everything business, finance, and economics. My name is Gabriel Carter. I am your co host today. Hopefully, I will have the rest of the guys joining me. But if not, our topic will be something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I think if you know me very well, you've heard that I've talked about this over and over and over and over. So uh, this is about overhauling the financial system in our country. Um, just give me 1 minute here. Let me let somebody in here. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about overhauling the financial system of our country. When I say our country, I mean Liberia, not that of the United States, but Liberia. Um, if you have been following the financial system or been studying the financial system of not just Liberia, but that of African country, as I have been, you will know, even if you compare our what we currently have as a system to that of our peers in the region, which is the Ghana, the Ivory Coast, uh, the even the one that we compare ourselves to very frequently, Rwanda. We're not even near to where we ought to be. And this is not just, hey, this is because of this government or this administration. I don't want to make this about politics because if you get to the bottom of everything that is within our financial system, it is not about politics because it existed as it is under the previous administration. It continuing to exist as it is under this current administration. It existed before even the war, right? And there's plenty of reason why I believe this is something that I actually believe that the reason why we have not aspired to the country we want to have as a country, what we want to be as a country, where we ought to be as a country, to even compete with the rest of the country on the continent, right, or even regionally, it's because of the failure within the system. And no president has ever come in to say, you know what, this is the reason why this country never goes anywhere because we don't have a well solid financial system that is able to meet the needs of the capital movement within the country, that is able to meet the needs of consumer and businesses in the country, that is able to be trusted by outside or international communities or even external investors to say this is a system that we can trust to be able to deploy capital in to bring country money in this country in order for it to benefit the entirety of the economy. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. And as I always like to say, we have a few questions here that I would like to explore. And if you can join me, please do take your time, bring your questions, your opinion, your perspective. I love perspective. Everybody have opinion, but to have perspective is to have a deep knowledge of what we're talking about. So bring your questions, bring your opinions, but I would rather your perspective. And so thank you for joining me. Jimmy, thank you for joining. How are you?
Hey, we're good. How are you, Gabriel?
I'm doing great. Thank you for joining me on this Saturday. I don't know if you were listening to me. So today we're going to be talking about, I'm sure you're probably aware, how to overhaul the financial system in our country. When I mean in our country, I mean Liberia, not the United States, right?
Right.
So we're going to look at some of the pitfalls and also what are areas of opportunities and and actually explore it in its entirety. And as always, we like to do here is, you know, offer some suggestion and solution as to what we can do better, uh, either from the consumer standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint within the government, or as a country as a whole. So um, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So thank you for joining me. I was waiting for the rest of the guys to come on here, but I think most of them are actually busy today. But hey, I know you have a very deep knowledge of
Let's
this,
do it.
so thank you for joining me. At least I won't have to be talking alone here for it to be a monologue. All right, so um, the first question that I want us to take a look at is, and this is something that we always do here on the show, because in as much that we think the people that listen to us are very intelligent people, but we also like to appeal to everybody. So when we talk about stuff like that, we like to define it. So um, the first question we want to answer is, what is considered our financial system? So in that case, what do we mean by uh, the financial system? And to answer that question, this is I think this is a brief overview of what it means. So a financial system refers to the complex network of institutions, markets, and mechanism that facilitate the flow of money, capital, and financial instrument within the economy. So, all right, hold on, let me let somebody else out here. So when we talk about financial system, that's what we mean about financial system. Uh, just give me a minute here. Alex, is that you in the background? Maybe I can't
Yes,
hear.
that is me, sir.
Okay. Have you been listening at all?
No, I just tuned in. I haven't been
Okay.
listening.
All right. Um, so today we're talking about, how to overhaul the financial system. Um, if you're still with us, how to overhaul the financial system. So Jimmy, thank you again. Thank you for joining us.
So
What do you?
my camera excuse my camera is not showing.
Yeah, I
Are you
don't know
seeing?
why. What's going on? Did you turn on your camera?
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Hmm. I can't
Are
do
you
anything
on a
with that.
laptop?
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
I'm
it's
on
your
a
laptop.
laptop.
I think it's your
Mm.
laptop. Yeah. So Jimmy, what do you? I mean, in terms of our financial system, what do you, what do you think are some of the financial system we have in Liberia? Or if you want to
Very good
expand on that,
question. Well,
right? Right.
yeah.
Go ahead.
First of all, a financial system needs to be transparent.
Right.
You want to be sure that if your money is placed in such a system, it
Hmm.
is also guaranteed safety.
Hmm.
And the only way we will reach a level that the world standards of financial system, is we if we are doing the things required
Hmm.
by these other institutions, financial institutions around the world, who are doing the
Yeah.
same things that they do, making the same
Right.
provisions that they articulate, so that investors, people who put their money in the system, will be
Uh-huh.
assured that their money is safe and secure.
Right.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so transparency is one.
Transparency. Yep.
Transparency is one. The other thing is security.
Yep.
Um, and I think the third thing is freedom to move it around as you want.
That is brilliant. Yes. Yep. Yep.
Because
Uh,
when people can't
no, go
get
ahead.
their money out, that also leads
Right. Yeah.
to mistrust.
Yeah.
So with those three cardinal things,
Yeah. I'm listening. I think we lost Jimmy there. Hopefully he can hear us and rejoin us. So Alex, welcome.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, so what we're talking about today, I know you have a background as running the FIU. What we want to talk about today is, so maybe you can, maybe not maybe you can speak to us from that perspective, in terms of what we're looking at is how to overhaul our financial system. And the reason why I think I've been beating down this drum that we need to overhaul is because I don't think it is at the level what we need it to be, whether we want to compare ourselves to our regional counterparts, or even if we want to say, you hear people talking about building the economy bigger than what it is right now, from the 1 billion to two, three, four, five, right? At that level of expansion, you're going to need a well financial system that no longer the government depends on, but the entire economy can be dependent on for it to be able to sustain that level of growth. Um, and I will propose that the reason why I think we haven't been able to grow to the level that we need to be compared to our counterparts, fundamentally, I think parts of that, a major part of that has to do because we have not figured out how to build our financial system that is function separate from the government and able to facilitate the business need and consumer needs of the country. This is why I wanted us to look at it. So the first thing I think I asked Jimmy when I talked about is what is the financial system. It's just a complex structures of institution that allowed us to move capital, money, and uh, the free flow of money around. And Jimmy talks about that system needs to have transparency, and he said it needs to have security. Or he also said it needs to have freedom, the freedom for people to move money around easily, right? And security meaning he also talked about trust, that one that people can trust, and transparency meaning there got to be you know something that we often hear in the diaspora community. When they go back, they want to take money, right? Sometimes the money is not there and all of that. So from your perspective, what have you, or what do you think are some of the challenges within our system as it currently is, if there are, if you even think there is any issue at all?
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel. I had to join the program today because you're talking about a topic. I saw the topic, and when you say overhaul the financial system,
Hmm.
um, I gotta, get a background of what your thought process are when this is specific to Liberia. Um, but just to piggyback on what Jimmy was saying, what if you talk more specifically Liberia? One of the things that every financial system, especially public sector financial statement, government financial system,
Hmm.
the biggest thing, the two biggest words that they pick at is it must assure accountability,
Hmm.
meaning that every revenue, every expenses must be accounted, properly accounted for.
Right.
So there must be structures that will do that, that will facilitate that process of making sure that every revenue that is coming in, every revenue stream
Hmm.
has a paper trail, the paperwork that covers that.
Yep.
On the flip side, the expenditure, as they spend the money, there is a public service system that covers that.
Right.
Um, then it must be transparent,
Hmm.
all right, meaning that the the results of those transactions that are accounted for must be made public, must because this is for public goods.
Right.
This is the public's money. The citizens of the country are shareholders in the country, so therefore these statements must be prepared.
Hmm.
Financial reports must be prepared,
Hmm.
and they must be available at the people's, first of all, at the people's representative, which are the legislature, and
Hmm.
must be available at the various county points, whether they are county service centers or at the superintendent's office. And it must be published widely on website, and to the extent that if even hard copies are taken to the county level, that is what we call transparency. And also
Hmm.
there got to be a budgetary and an open budgetary process that facilitate the budgeting of the annual revenue and income of the country. and then there must be budget at turn report, as we call it in Liberia, where you simply say budget performance report,
Mhm.
and then and those things, the result of those things should be subject to audit to ensure that the right things are done, because audit is not only about going after people, it's also about checking the system, whether the system is working properly, whether the system is accountable, whether the system is transparent, and whether nobody is doing the wrong thing with the funding that is being generated by the country and being expended by the country.
Right. Okay. Jimmy, I know you were thank you. And I think you and Jimmy are actually on the same trail here in terms of what you guys are talking about. Jimmy, I know you were talking before we lost you. You didn't finish your thought. Did you want to finish? Um,
Anyway, let's continue because
okay.
um, what the question that Alex asked,
Hmm.
overhauling
Right.
the financial system.
Hmm.
Um, so exactly where are we going with that? Are we suggesting first, because to overhaul anything, you have to assess the current system, right?
Brilliant.
You have to make a
Hold that thought real
assess.
quick. Hold that thought real quick. That brings
Mhm.
us to the next. Man, it looks like you read my thoughts. Brilliant. There goes I had this written down before you even mentioned that word. But here it is. Yes. So go ahead, as you were saying.
Yeah. So we have to look at what do we have now,
Hmm.
and where definitely needs improvement,
Right.
and um, how are we going to go about improving it,
Right.
and what are the costs
Yep.
associated with making these changes?
Hmm.
Okay, because
Hmm.
some changes are more costly than um, what you want to do.
Hmm.
So you want to get the best for out of your resources. So you have to
Yep.
pick and choose which kind of changes you want to make. Are they going to be effective? Are they worth changing? And all these are the kind of considerations we'll want to make.
Hmm. Yeah. I, Alex.
So back to you, Gabriel. Again, I mean, when we're talking about overhauling this
Mhm.
financial system, again, what is in your mind for the topic? What did you
Okay.
think
So
about?
this is what I was talking about. So let me maybe we should have done I should have done this at the beginning of the show, diagnose the problem. So when I say overhauling our financial system, I think you guys talked about some of that. There's not we don't have a, a banking system that is trusted by the international community, right? And I say that I don't just say that because I say it. I say it because this is something that I studied. It's not something that is trusted by the international community, meaning that not just in the international community, even folks like us, most people in the diaspora don't trust it, right? Like we don't feel that level of comfort to bring our money and say that, hey, this money is going to be secure. And I think you guys talked about the level of security. And I think Jimmy talks about freedom, right? Um, the other thing is that I like to talk about is I this is something I've always talked about is we're not capitalized. And I said this from the beginning of the show. We're not capitalized, meaning that we are not at the level that if that economy start picking up, we have a financial system in place or banking system in place that is able to meet the needs of the current that level of growth that we want it to be, right? It is functioning even barely to the level that we currently have it, right? So we're not capitalized. Now capitalization, it could come in different way. It could mean that, hey, you are maybe a multimillionaire. You say, you know what, I want to go put money in the banking system in Liberia because I know I can make a lot of money in there. I mean, you're investing in it. One, or the central bank of Liberia could say, you know what, these banks do not have the reason why they're not lending to a lot of Liberian people. A lot of businesses in Liberia, and the economy is not expanding as it needs to be. Is because they don't have money, and we could do something with the capital reserve, the reserve ratio. we could uplift it, so that means they can have enough money in them to be able to lend to these people. So we're undercapitalized, right? The other thing is, and these are the things that I'm listening. We have a predatory lending system in Liberia, like pervasive to its core, and is unfettered, and nobody regulates it. And you don't have to take my word for it, as I always like to say. Go back to Liberia, go to different market women, go to different marketplaces and talk to them and ask them, hey, where do you get your money to start your business? How much interest rate you paying? I did that way back in 2020, 2013. And every time I go to library in 20, every year since 2019, I do the same thing, right? It's pervasive. So that means you lend money to people like that. They leave. They can take that money. You can take that level of money to make your market, but the level of interest rate you're paying on that money, the moment you make one mistake, that means you're defaulting on that loan, and it becomes a problem. The other one that I think you and everybody here should know about is the non-performing loan problem, right? I've said this, I think, on the previous show before. It's a simple problem that can be fixed, but we cannot look at it at from one administration standpoint. We can't put this on this administration. We can't put this on the previous administration either. It existed long before these two administrations existed, right? And it's a problem that we have with the banking system, that, and they have that will to do that too. You can't blame them from doing that. Everybody lend to the same group of people, which is those that are working in the government, because those are the people that have constant money coming in, security level money coming in, or even those that have money to be lent to. So everybody go after one group. But the problem with that is, once the government stop paying people, civil servants, as they normally do sometimes, let's say 2 3 months or 6 months, guess what? Because these banks are so exposed to those group of people, they now start having liquidity problem as a result of the non-performing loan that they have on their book, because they're too exposed. Heavy and majority of their books, loans on their balance sheets, are exposed to people that work in the government, right? And that can be solved just by regulating them. We in the banking world we have over here, OCC regulate exposure. If you're too exposed to the commercial real estate, they will tell you you got to limit your lending to that sector. If you're too exposed to this sector, they will tell the bank specifically, stop lending to that sector or cut down your lending to that sector because you're too exposed. And if something happened within that sector, it can pose a problem for you, right? So it's a regulatory problem that is not being enforced and is continuing. It has existed in this administration, the previous one, and even before these two administrations existed. So without even going on and on and on, those are the three ones I want to talk about today, and we can talk about more. There's a whole lot there's a whole you know plethora of other challenges that is within our system, for which I believe meeting they're not performing to the level of which they're performing. So that's the direction I was looking at it. That in order for us to get to this level, if we want to grow the budget beyond that, right? That means you have to pump more money into the businesses. And if you're pumping more money in the businesses from the government side, that need to be facilitated in the private sector too. And do we think we have a banking sector that is able to do that, to facilitate that level of growth? That is the meat and bounds of this conversation that I wanted to have today. So I know I've said a lot. That's the direction I wanted us to go. Right.
Okay, if you
So,
allow me,
Gabriel, when I saw the topic, overhauling the financial
go
system,
ahead. Go ahead, Alex.
and then when I joined the program, from what I started hearing from Jimmy, I mean, your question that you posed to Jimmy,
Mhm.
I thought you were talking about the financial system in terms of the
The budget.
public sec public sector financial system, the budgeting system, the reporting system, and the expenditure system, and things like that, the revenue generation system, how that is taken care of, and what prevents corruption,
Mhm.
and things like that, and the reporting system as well. So that is what I thought, because when Jimmy was asking the question, when you posed the question about those elements, that where I thought, but now I'm hearing you to be focusing on more or less the banking sector with respect to um, um, financing credit, and things, loans, and things like that.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
So overhauling the financial system.
Yes. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Jimmy, you were trying to say something.
Yes. Very good. I mean, now where you're going to talk about, I think Emmanuel Jackson, he touched it just now in his comment.
Mhm.
You have to establish a system to determine credit worthiness. Now,
Yep.
the bigger the risk, the more the interest is going to be. How do we establish that a business entity or individual is credit
Mhm.
worthy? As you see
Yeah.
here, we may take it for granted, but our credit scores are kept by a separate autonomous organization. And it's
Exactly.
in that fact, there are a couple of organizations that determine an individual or a business's credit score. So, with
Right.
that credit score, given that you have a significant credit score, you can go and borrow, and your borrowing will be given an interest rate due to your credit score. So one of the bankers, the people at like they have there's that they don't have institutions that rate potential creditors.
Yep.
So you will find Liberians as a whole, the perception is that they're not very credit worthy.
Mhm.
That's the perception of the banks and creditors. I know there's one place right on 21st Street in Cinco, 20th Street in Cinco, that lends people money at 30%.
Yeah.
30%. Now, to pay back a 30% loan, you have to be making a profit of more than 30% as a
Yep.
business. And
Yep.
that is a very that is a pretty steep um profit range, you know?
Yep.
I mean, so how many people or how do people manage to pay back these 30% loans if you're doing business? It's not understandable. So we need a system that will first rate the credit worthiness of individuals, of Liberians, so that they won't have to take these draconian loans, so that they have better potential of borrowing from the banks, you know. And that is one of the first things to establish, you know. So how will we go about establishing that? Hmm? An individual, you know, right now, a Liberian going to get a loan, he has to deposit collateral, either his property, his house, whatever that he has. That's the basis of how they do it in Liberia. Now, over
Mhm.
here, I bought a house and I didn't have anything. The only thing I had was a job,
Mhm.
and the job was with established multinational company. So they gave me the $100 and some more $1,000.
Yeah.
You see, so here we can take advantage of the job, but in Liberia, if you don't have property and you can't if you don't have collateral to put down, you can't get that loan. So we need a system that will allow Liberians to build their credit so that they will become credit worthy, and so that the banks will be willing to lend them this money. I think that's one of the first things we need to do. How do we establish a system that will rate Liberians so that Liberians can get access to finance? A lot of business people tell you that Liberian business people tell you they can't get money, but they lend it to the Lebanese. Why do they lend it to the Lebanese or the Indians? And that is because they have guarantors, or the perception of banks for these Indian people is different. And if you have somebody who will stand for you, like a fellow merchant, business merchant, like
Mhm.
Abijade say, I'm going to stand for my brother at the bank, they will give him the money because Abijade is going to pay them if he defaults. So that is one of the things that is hampering Liberians for getting credit loans. So we have to get a system that can Liberians can buy into and build their credit worthiness.
Yeah. Thank you,
So I'm
Alex.
I'm paying I'm paying keen attention to the word overhaul. So when I look at the banking sector, the banking system, and then I put it in the context of your topic, overhauling the financial system, and we narrow it to the banking sector. So in any country, and Liberia for that matter, what are those elements in the banking sector? So the question come to mind is that the first thing is, for me, is regulation. Okay, right? The central bank regulates the commercial banks,
Yeah.
and every facet of the banking system is looked at during the regulation. And so whether they are accurate, I mean, they are proper regulatory framework in terms of laws and the supporting regulations, and whether those things are enforced, that banks are properly um regulated, supervision exercises are regular supervision exercises are held in
Right.
every area, because a regulatory exercise, a supervision exercise include credit worthiness, solvency,
Hmm.
anti-money laundering measures.
Yeah.
There are different ratios and things like that. Their reserve requirement, whether they're meeting their reserve requirement and things
Yeah.
like that, and even their liquidity.
Yeah.
So all these things are looked at. So do we need to do more properly ensure that we are doing our supervision exercises by the central bank, and are bank penalized, and whatever
Mm,
penalties are given to them, are they dissuasive enough to dissuade them, if I'll use that word again,
mhm.
from getting involved in those acts that they are caught off in the supervision exercise. um the other thing that come to mind is, these banks, how are they getting their liquidity? How are they solvent? Are they meeting their reserve ratio?
Yeah.
Right? Because before you lend money, you have to get money, because it's
Absolutely.
depositors' money that you are getting. I mean, that you are lending out.
Right.
Um, are those banks solvent? Do people have? You mentioned confidence. Do people have
Right.
confidence in the banking sector to put their money in there in the first place, so that these banks can lend this money out for them to make money? What is you talk about interest rate? What is the interest rate that the people are charging? The last time I checked, on a small business loan, on a commercial loan, or individual loan, they're charging anything between 10% to 14%.
Mhm.
And as Jimmy just said, outside of the banking system or somewhere else, they're charging way higher than that.
Yeah.
Um, are these interest rate, are they good enough? What are the processes for lending?
Mhm.
Is it disadvantage to the extent that, for example, the guy goes to a bank to lend, I mean to borrow money, and there's a tendency of um, activities happening there where you want the person to give you something upfront before, and the
Before you
person
lend the
doesn't
money.
have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then another person come, maybe a merchant come and
Yep.
put $500 on the table and say
Yep.
that's for you.
Yeah.
And then you lend the person the money, and the person is not person doesn't have intention to pay.
Yeah.
Or if the person who has intention to pay has a contract in his hand, this contract is coming forward, receivables are coming in, and he wants
Yep.
to finance.
That's
And
collateral.
because of
Yep.
that delay process,
Yeah.
he skips the timing. And once he
Yep.
skips the timing, obviously he's going to enter into a situation where he's not being able to pay back.
Yep.
So then you create a situation where the guy is not able to pay back, and then you say, oh, people, Liberians don't like to pay loans back. Okay, there's a process. So what is being done? You talk about credit rating system. Yeah, they
Mhm.
have a little bit of credit rating system to the Central Bank of Liberia, but is
Yeah.
that enforced? So
Yeah.
these are elements that we have to look at to say which element on this value chain is wrong, that we can propose overhauling measures to.
Wow, man, you guys just said a whole lot. And when I started talking about this whole conversation, I didn't think we were going to cover that much and that much in detail. But and I'm glad that I have both of you on here. You guys just talked about a whole lot.
Because
So
well, given because the topic is big, so
you know what? I didn't think. Yeah, you're right. I should have segmented it. Maybe I should have segmented it because it's big. There's a whole lot of direction we can go in.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a
You and
huge
Jimmy
topic.
talk. Yeah, it's a very huge topic. And now that you guys started talking, I said, man, there's it's just like you think you're going to go jump in a
And,
in a in a
and
river, you
mind
end up
you,
swimming
Gabriel,
in.
mind you, Gabriel, we haven't even touched the surface because
Yeah.
when we go to we have to digitize the system. That's another thing.
Ah. Yeah. Yeah.
Liberia is
Yeah.
still a very manual economy.
Yeah.
We have not. We're beginning to introduce mobile money and stuff, but most transactions in
Hmm.
Liberia are manual, hand to cash in hand, and the world today has been moved on to digital transactions.
Hmm.
And I love the point that Alex just mentioned. He said, are these banks solvent? Let's look at this thing.
Mm.
First of all, you have to have a minimal deposit with the Central Bank of Monrovia,
Hmm.
right? So that they guarantee that these banks will give people the depositors their money.
Yeah.
But we see in Liberia that the government is able to go into the central bank vault and take out money.
Right.
Now that is a definite no. Do you know it was in the beginning of this administration? It was so rampant that other entities, international entities, had to step in and say, "You can't do this.
Yeah.
If you're going to do this, we're not going to send any money there."
Right.
Okay, so that's another thing you have to protect. You have to protect the central bank from any. The government should not be allowed to go into the vault of the
Right.
central bank for whatever reason. It's untouchable. That's not your money. That is depositors' money, and you don't have a right to take it.
Yeah.
So those are the sort of things, the regulations we have to establish in this overhaul to make our banking systems more viable.
And thank you. And I think somebody on another show, I think somebody said that the central bank used to be a separate entity by itself, but that got revoked. I think sometime not too long ago. So now is more political than it should be. Um, and for me, I think whatever regulation that they use to revoke that independence, it needs to be. And I think you guys keep saying that it needs to be put in place. But there's one thing I wanted, as I said, there's a whole direction. There's a lot of direction we can take this topic. But there's one thing you guys talked about, both of you talked about, and I want to stress on that. And I think, and, and I don't understand. I don't know if this is a competent thing or it's just as we always do. We have regulations on the books, which I believe we do. Everything that is wrong with Libra, we have the regulations on the book. We just don't enforce it. There's something you guys talked about, which is I think Alex talked about it in terms of having account receivables, right? In any society, that is a collateral. You have account receivable. I render service to Jimmy. I have account receivable that's I owe you that I get from Jimmy. I can take that I owe you to Alex's bank and say, Alex, I have a receivable from Jimmy for let's say $100,000. Now, from a bank from Alex's underwriting standpoint, he would say, you know what, the way we value receivable is 75%. So whatever you're getting from Jimmy's supposed to pay you, we take 75%. We can't give you the 100%. So Alex can say, hey, we can give you 75,000 out of that $100,000 Jimmy owe you, and I can get a $75,000 loan from Alex's bank, right? Just like that. That's collateral. What I've heard is that we had a collateral system that was being developed, right? That would have made some of this lending process easier, especially for the average Liberian, who gets stigmatized that they don't pay back loan. At least if they're able to bring some level of collateral to the bank and the bank is able to assess it in a way, it would have solved it. But we had that system being developed it hasn't been really flushed out, fully developed to flush out across the banks, across the sector, right? So that is becoming a bigger problem, right? So let's say I have a house. I take it as perfect example. I take it to Alex's bank and I say, Alex, take I giving this house as a collateral for $100,000 loan, right? I won 100,000, and Alex gave me 100,000. He took first lien position on a house. If I can, I should be. If I go to your banks, Jimmy, let's say you have a bank. If I go to your banks to bring that same house as collateral, there should be a collateral system that we have in place to say, Alex Bank has first lien position on it. And this house you're bringing to me for take another 100,000 is only worth 150,000. So I can't even give you another 200, 100,000. I can only give you up to 50,000. There should be that level of transparency within the, even if it's not controlled by the banks, it should be controlled by the government, right? Over here is done by the states. So if you have your business and you borrow loan, I can go on the state website and type in your business name. I will see everybody that you owe that took money from you. It's right on the state website. This person have first lien position. This person has second. The person have third. So if I'm going to give you another money, I'm going to go in fourth place. We can develop something like that to begin with. It was being developed that never got flushed out. So we're there. And there's a huge stigmatization on Liberian people that they don't pay back loan that I don't like, and some of it could be real, some of it could be just be full stigma, right? And I would say this one before I land. You guys talk about regulations, right? I don't think we are doing regulation the way we need to be doing it. Even if we are doing it, I don't think to the level of which I think Alice talked about in detail, right? If we're doing it, we should be looking at everything that we call the loan to deposit ratio, right? In the banking sector, when you call your loan to deposit ratio, there's only the certain amount you can lend out, right? On the deposit you get, there's certain amount you can lend out compared to the amount of loans you have. That's the loan to deposit ratio. Yes, we operate. Every one of us operate. Every bank in the world operate on what we call the Federal Reserve System. That means the fractional system. You know, if you have put deposit $1 into your bank, you don't have to have that entire dollar in there. You can lend up to a certain amount, given the ratio that is set within your country, right? Are these things being regulated? Are they being enforced? And that could determine whether your bank is able to be solvent or not with solvency, right? If we are looking at these things, it will be able to tell whether these banks are solvent or not. And I think mm, a big part of what is wrong with us, I mean, banks in our country, it is because I don't think we regulate these things, and these banks know within themselves they not if they continue to lend to the level of which there's the demand, they won't have enough money left. And it's because the central bank is not regulating them to know that, hey, this bank is not even, it doesn't even have the level of capital loan to deposit ratio that it needs to have to be able to be lending into even within the risk appetite that is set for itself, right? So I think for me, it's a regulations thing, is compliance, right? Regulation compliance, and it's a big part of that also has to do with competency. Like I always said, trust me, everything we're talking about, these regulations are on the books. I've checked, you go on the central bank, everything we talk about, they have these things on there. But it's just the level to which we talked about them. And one last thing, I think Alex said this earlier. If we were doing our job, if the central banks were doing their job, there would be like I've started following the Liberian banking system since the middle of Allen administration. I never heard one bank get penalized for something. Whether it's predatory lending or not meeting their reserve requirement. The only thing you can hear, I've been hearing about, is this one is failing. This one has failed. This one is failing. The insolvent. Somebody's about to buy it. And that buying thing is never comes on the market. You don't hear about it. You just hear, hey, some guys are making deals behind closed doors so somebody want to buy the bank. So if we were doing our job, we would be able to catch these kind of insolvency problem way before they even happen, and to be able to penalize, those guys that are not following the regulations. Because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, this financial system makes up a big part of our economy, and it should be incumbent upon us as a country, as a government, to make sure that it is safe, sound, and trusted by not just the Liberian but the international community as well. So I wanted to put that out there. Yeah.
Yeah, Gabriel, just to make a point there from the beginning of your statement, you talk about the independence of the central bank vis-a-vis the law.
Mhm.
Uh, the central bank is in the law of the current law of the central bank is makes the central bank. Yes, the appointment is done by the president, blah blah blah, but it makes the central bank independent, like any integrated organization or things like that. It makes the
Mhm.
central bank independent. What the law did was they move us from where we call Bank of Liberia
Mhm.
to make Liberia equate to the this banking sector around the sub region and around the world. That
Right.
to make Liberia a central banking system. So that law, that old Bank of Liberia thing was scrapped. A new law was put in place, but it make the law. No law may be perfect, but it makes the central bank independent, right?
Mhm.
There are a few things that people stay dealing with in terms of what it should be happening. Whether the central bank should have its absolute autonomy in minting, doing money like the Federal Reserve or something like that. Whether the legislature is supposed to be the one that to dictate, as it is in the Constitution now, that the legislature is the one that is responsible for approving the making of money. Those are little arguments here and there, but
Mhm.
the central bank law makes it independent. The only problem that we see is the way, under every government, the way the central bank is being interfered with,
Mhm.
right? Like the central bank the central bank takes care of the monetary policy, and the Ministry of Finance take care of the fiscal policy. But when the Ministry of Finance leave it, in addition to its fiscal policy, keep meddling into monetary policy, then
Right.
and then when the presidency or the legislature keep meddling in the activities of the central bank, then it makes it as though the central bank is not independent because
Mhm.
there are too much meddling in the central bank's work.
Yeah.
So the central bank, again, the central bank law, it may not be perfect, but it may have some little nuances that need to be changed. But the central bank overall, the law makes it independent on
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah, on paper, and that's that takes up into the next topic that I had on here, as to as we look at the whole overhauling structure is, trust me, like I think you alluded to most of the thing that in this next question is, how do you balance the politics being out in terms of doing what is right for the country, right? You can say, in order, like you said, the Minister of Finance having that commingling with the central bank, it's a problem, right? And it could, yes, he could say, hey, I need to do that in order to effectively do what I need to do on my job. And we can also make the argument that no, you don't need to do that, because in doing that, you threaten the financial system of this country. Because if the government defaults, that could impact on the central bank as well, and that could cause a bigger problem. So the question, like, how do you, if you were to be in charge of this, how do you balance that political involvement from the other side, from the fiscal side, to the monetary enforcement that you want to put in place to make sure that you have a sane and sound financial system that people can trust? How do you balance? How do you walk that tightrope?
That's a good question.
Right.
But we have established that the central bank has to be autonomous
Right.
to the level where the government cannot simply go in there and take the money out.
Uh-huh.
The other day they had a crisis in Liberia.
Mhm.
They had a foreign exchange crisis. They couldn't. There was some time people couldn't take their money out of the bank. I don't know if you guys recall that. I think that was somewhere last year or the year before.
We do. I will remember, and that's the next thing I will want us to focus on the confidence in the bank once we finish with what Gabriel is saying.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Because we are aware there's people not trusting the bank, so they don't put their monies in the bank, and that is why
Mhm.
the banks have a little less money to lend out, and that's a confidence. Where Alex was saying, that is the confidence factor. Why people don't trust the banks? People don't trust the banks because they believe they can't get their money out when they want it, so they're not going to put it there. So there's a separate system that is operating in Liberia now. So to
Mhm.
restore that system, they have to build that confidence in the banks
Yeah.
that your money there, you can get it at any time. Now, back to the crisis. There was a crisis one time. People could not get the money, the foreign currency out of the bank when they requested it. Only one
Mhm.
bank did, and that was the IB Bank, the International Bank of Liberia. That bank found a way to insulate themselves from that crisis. And how did they do that? Well, that is what we have. That's the kind of method we need to employ for all banks, because you could put thousands of dollars in the IB Bank and get it out the next day, while other banks were struggling. So the way they went about insulating themselves from the the whims and throes of the government going into their accounts, that is how we have to do to insulate all the banks. Um, and but a lot importantly, the government itself has to understand why they should not go into the banks. That when you do that, you are debilitating the financial system. In other words, you're going to get less money in revenues because businesses will not want to operate. You'll get um, flight of capital because the people will not want to put their money into the banks, and also your credit worthiness is going to be questioned. People now want to lend you money because you have not you operate an unethical or unsafe manner in how you handle your financial affairs. And I think that is the beginning, that the government has to know that this is a faux pas, is a no do. You cannot afford to do this. You know, governments do learn. I think the administration has learned. You don't see that anymore, but in the beginning of this administration, we saw that a lot. Just going into the coffers, going into reserve funds for projects and just taking it. That's not responsible as a financial. That's not fiscal responsibility. I know that they get strapped for cash, but the solution is not to go into other accounts and just simply take the money out. We need to demonstrate more financial responsibility than that.
Mhm. Yeah, I agreed. And it's I think you and Alec keep touching on this thing about the collision of government and the central bank, and how that needs to be separate. That got to be that it has to be with its own institution on itself without the government meddling. And you said like we've had that, and it's a question that I always ask is we do have a committee on finance at the as the there's a body that is a committee on finance at the legislature, right?
Yeah, banking.
It,
Yeah,
it
banking. They
right
have a they have both a Senate standing committee and House of Representatives standing committee on banking and finance. Yeah.
right. I mean, are these things that they deliberate like when they meet? Is it are these things they're supposed to be talking about, and how that I don't think sometimes maybe we over here we complain, but I don't think they understand what the system means for us to survive as a country. They have not a clue. And even if they do, these are things that they're supposed to be deliberating. Like we should be piggybacking on their conversation and say, "Oh, these guys just had this conversation. I like what they said about that. I didn't like what they said about this." These are things that they're supposed to be talking about, and making sure that they're leading the forefront of this conversation. Because if our banking system fail, that country fails as a nation. I don't think we understand that. And if we do, then somebody needs to be calling their attention to that, to them, for them to be having these kind of conversations. Yeah. Alex, did you want to add to it before we get to the next topic?
Yeah, Gabriel. I mean, when you, I mean, generally, our problem is overall. I always point to you know governance. Um, you know, proper governance, right? And good leadership, selfless leadership begets good governance.
Mm,
Um, what is the one of the key elements? The good governance situation in our Liberia has a structure. I always say that Liberia. I mean, laws are subject to revision, changes, and stuff like that because of different reasons, including technological changes and different things, international affairs, or different things that come in the mainstream. So laws can be changed anytime. Even greater economies, laws are changed every now and then when stuff happens. But we have a structure. We have a governance structure. We have a lot of reforms have been done. We have a lot of good laws. We have a lot of good institutions, and so system needs to be improved every now and then. System needs to be overhauled every now and then. But we have a system that exists in every facet of our society and our country and our governance structure. But when you deliberately not adhere to the tenets of good governance, one of the biggest element is putting the right people in the right places.
mhm,
People who come with the pedigree to who have like a friend of mine says always say people who have claim to fame, meaning that people who have demonstrated a background, whether it's educational background, experience, especially your experience background, people who've done these things before or who have the ability to be able to do these things. If you don't put them to the right places, if you put square pegs in round hole, I mean, if a leader deliberately appoints people to positions because um, they are cheering squad,
mhm,
because they don't have the tenacity and the guts to speak truth to power. And when they do that, they are dismissed or they are chased after. Um, then you will have a situation where you have a proliferation of the problems that we're having in our country. So therefore, you have continuous interference in with institutions such as the Central Bank of Liberia, which is autonomous, and when you appoint sort of the wrong people to those kind of institutions, then you have the problems that we're having, right?
mhm.
So we have to speak in context here. That's the bedrock of our problem going, as we go along from administration to administration. That's the problem we are grappling with.
Yeah. And Jimmy, any thoughts on that? No. Okay. Maybe he can hear us. All right. So I agreed, and I think I don't. Maybe we're beating down a dead horse here, or maybe we're playing you know the drum to a choir that's not even listening. But I believe, as I said before at the beginning of the show, this is the I'm hearing a feedback. This is fundamentally the biggest challenge we have as a country. Until we figure that out, you can bring any president and put him in a presidency. If he doesn't figure out how he will help him build the financial system and use it as one of the probably his biggest vehicle to get the economy to where he wanted to get, you I'm not saying you won't succeed. You will succeed, but only to a level. You will succeed to only to a level, but only it will just plateau at that level without going beyond this frontier market to a middle income. And why do I say middle income country? Why do I say that? So we see now we saw we continue to see what's happening in Rwanda. Rwanda has reached a level where they believe, where we know now, in order for them to get to the middle income level, the biggest focus has to be on their financial institution. Do you know what they did? They developed the financial board of Rwanda. They brought in the former CEO of Credit Suisse, the biggest Swiss, one of the biggest Swiss bank, Tijan, who's an Ivorian, to help them build that infrastructure. With that infrastructure now, guess what happened? People trust it. It is secure. It is people have confidence in it. They're now able to attract investments. They just landed $2 billion to build probably what will become the biggest airport in Africa from the Saudi government, right? They are building what will become a financial hub. If we're not careful, this is something we could have become the financial hub on the continent. And they know that because if you reach a level, they know that in order for you to get to the next level, as I said, you can come in and build your economy and do all these things, structural reform in the budgetary, the political, the law. But in order to get to that next level to become a middle income, you have to build a solid system that people can come and invest their money in confident without them having any doubt about your government, the system, and how it flows, and all of that. The transparency has to be there, and that's Rwanda. That's what Rwanda is doing. Give the next 10 years, or maybe next five, or maybe the next 5 to 10 years, you will see Rwanda slowly becoming a middle income state. And it's not because of what Paul Kagame is doing. Yes, to that, but it's what he saw that in order to get to that level, having a strong financial system is able to do. Tijen actually sits on that board of their that financial system that they're building. And this is why I keep saying that if we want to get to that level, yes, you can bring any president and they will come in and do all these reform, but it will not get beyond that until they figure how to really leverage the financial system. So I guess we've talked a lot about this. Maybe we can go on to the next
Yeah,
topic,
but
which is
Gabriel,
right.
that president, okay, for Kagame, for that example,
Right.
yeah, he may have his own, flaws, but for that example, Rwanda is a country that is pointed at all the times. So that president must be a visionary to
Hmm.
be able to sustain um, a selfless move towards reaching a country to a middle class. And in order to do that, I'm sure Paul Kagame brought in lieutenants
Hmm.
that were able, because he can be everywhere. So he brought in able lieutenants to move that process forward. And
Yep.
where those able lieutenants were lacking behind, of course, there's 10 other Rwandans who can do that stuff, who are qualified to do that stuff.
Hmm.
So if one person filter, yes, you call in a soldier, right, to join the team to move the
Yeah.
system forward. But you have to be visionary to the extent to sustain whatever you started. You can start it at one point. After a few years, then you switch it to something else. Then you enter into the everyday situation. No, it has to be sustained to the end. So that is why you now you can say that Rwanda is moving to, it could be moving to middle class, middle income country in the next years to come, right? Because they continue to move from progress to progress, right? They continue to establish systems, and those systems are manned by people.
Hmm.
Systems do operate in vacuum. They are manned by people.
Hmm.
And when systems operate and try and test it for a number of years,
Yeah.
then the system tends to hold people, like in the great United States of America, because over the years, probably more than 100 years, they took
Hmm.
to build the system and sustain the system. They sustain the culture of people obeying laws. They sustain the culture of knowing people, the citizens knowing that if I do this thing, if I if I cross this stop sign, there will be a police horn behind me. If I
Hmm.
do this, there'll be a so the culture of obeying law, the culture of making sure you're doing the right thing is inculcated into the people. But
Yeah.
if you don't sustain the system that you build through continuous law enforcement, through continuous enforcement of the different policies, through punishing people,
Yeah.
Then you encourage a system of impunity that people feel that they can do anything anytime and get along with it. If you
Yeah.
continue to put the wrong people there and they continue to do the wrong thing, then the generation that is coming after will believe that, oh, it's cool to
It's
do wrong
okay.
things, and you
Right.
get so you build that society, you build that culture. So
Right.
places like Rwanda, a visionary Paul Kagame is continuing to sustain people doing the right thing, to
Yeah.
sustain the fact that the city is clean. Because you know when you throw dirt, you know what is going to happen to you.
Hmm.
There's got to be a stiff penalty for throwing
Yeah.
dirt. The
Yeah.
same way you can't kill deer in America, you get scared the deer come to your house, you get scared to kill the deer because you know what is going to happen to you. Because that deer that
Yeah.
meat staring in your face, my friend,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
kill that deer. The deer is
Yeah.
walking past in your yard, but you can
Hmm.
kill that deer
You can
because you
kill
know
it.
the
Yeah.
penalty for killing the
Yeah.
deer. So
Yeah.
you got to have a visionary leader who will stand there and promote good governance and promote people, the citizenry doing the right thing, and people will follow on.
Yeah. I absolutely agree.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. To add to what Alex was saying, I do admire what Rwanda is doing in some cases, but my model for fighting corruption is Singapore,
mhm.
and the first thing it requires is a that your political leaders are committed to the fight against corruption.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't do anything until the leaders are committed to this, you know. And I remember asking Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, in a townhouse meeting that she was bringing on some old guard, and I said, with questionable characters, and I said, what will you do about the corruption as you bring in these old people, questionable characters back in? And she
Yeah.
said that she will, you know, apply the law. Well, the
Yeah.
laws are there, okay, but what has been is the will to apply it, and there has to be a commitment. All these things we're talking just now is leaders. If there's not a commitment by our leaders to fight corruption,
Yeah.
Singapore, you know what they have? They don't just have a board to correct, but they have a board to prevent corruption. So we're not just talking about, they're not just looking at correcting, they're looking at preventing.
Yeah.
So they are actively involved in anything that is suspect of corruption. And but that is a commitment. They owe that to the commitment by the leaders. So
Yeah.
until our leaders realize that the only way Liberia will ever progress is if we reduce the level of corruption that's there. Now, I had a friend of mine talking one time. He said, Jim, until certain people enrich themselves, it's not it's not going to stop. So people, when they get there, let's be very honest about this. When they get into power and they're poor, you don't have money, you don't even have a good room to sleep in.
Mm.
Okay, you're going to be tempted. You're going to be tempted to go into the coffers of government or to do some act that will bring you money that is illicit. So what do? Do we say we shouldn't be bring people who are poor into the government? No. But what do? We have to make it very punishable.
Yeah.
We have to make it not worth the risk.
Hmm.
And to do that, that's what requires leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I agree with both of you.
Because
And
the temptation will.
yeah, and I do agree with both of you. And I know we talk about Rwanda. So if you guys didn't know exactly what Rwanda is doing, it's out of the playbook of Singapore. Like they're taking everything out of the playbook of Singapore to implement it in Rwanda, right? So that's what Paul Kagame is doing in Rwanda. Now the thing about Paul Kagame, from what I know, is that he he might be soft spoken, but he's a very stern person. Like he is, you know, you can even say ruthless. So you dare break a rule in our country, right? There's a story that I've heard where even the I forgot what it's called, the cleaning thing that they do every month, right? The president of Uganda, Museveni, visited him on a Saturday in Uganda. Guess what? He gave this guy a broom to clean in front of, like, the guy Museveni had to take a broom and clean in front of the mansion. Everybody, like, you driving in the country, if they see you driving in this country, they would police, if the police stop you on the cleaning day, they will ask you, where are you going? How come you're not cleaning? And you better be going to a place where you're going to clean. You know. So yes, we see him as this soft moving guy, but when it comes to enforcing, he is a very stern person. You know, you can look at the good side, but you also look at the other side of him that is very, you don't dare want to cross a guy like him. So in addition to the law being there also got to be that stern assertion, enforcement of it. That I don't care if this is my father, he better make sure that he gets a good lawyer, because he's going to, the same way that anybody else will carry, he will carry that same weight of the Lord as well. So he has that level of enforcement within him, and this is why, like you guys keep saying, the ability to enforce the good leadership needs to be there. And another thing that is on Paul Kagami's side is, contrary to what we are as a system, he has years, right? The average president, if you're lucky to win 2 terms, is 12 years. Paul Kagame has been there over 25 years. So he has that time to be able to carry out his plans and agenda to that level that we're currently seeing right now. And that's a luxury that, you know, no other, at least as we know, as a democratic society right now, no other Liberian president will have. We have somebody who had that for 27 years, who was equally so, but we didn't get us there. Um, the next thing we want to talk about before we get into, I don't know, maybe we should go into the comments first, and then we'll talk about the confidence within the banking system.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, okay, all right. So let's dive into the comment session,
I don't
and
know. Every time I switch to my computer, I
yeah,
don't
I
see
don't
my
know what's
picture.
going
But
on with
let's
you.
continue. I'll go back to my phone.
For 1 second, I said maybe he in Liberia. That's why we can see him.
No, no, no.
uh,
I'm still nursing my, ha-
it,
my hand though. So
it's so nothing. You look
yeah,
better
everything
than
else.
like you look better than you looked the last time. So I think there's a lot of
Yeah,
improvement there. Yeah.
yeah, it's getting better.
All right.
But every time I
Yeah.
squeeze my face, then if it's pinning me.
Yeah. But you got to keep doing that, to help the blood movement. All right.
Yeah,
So this is Mr. Paibo. Hopefully I pronounced the name right. He said, in Liberia, when when politicians present the budget and economics policy statement, they should also add a financial management law or constitutional instrument or legislative instrument.
that's Edison Pajibo.
Yes, and that will audit the lifestyle of government official before and after. Oh, this is just goes in line with something that you're saying. Before and after they leave power. Um, and who else here? I think it's Edison here again. He said, "How can the public trust the banking system in Liberia when there are vulnerability in the financial system? For example, what is the what is the import cover regarding the country's international reserve?" Hmm. Um, and then we have Emmanuel Hayes said, creating a credit rating economy in Liberia, the government would have will have
Would
to be
have to be.
transparent in its
Yes.
economic policy. Currently, it is not existing in Liberia. I think that goes in line with what you were saying. Um,
Mm.
uh, and then we have Paivo again. Man, I think this is something that really interests him. Is that the banks of Liberia's, which is the regulator of the financial system is politicized. Its bigger achievement is the printing paper money against the backdrop of the limited goods in the market. Uh, and it is the banks and statistical agency doing honest and is the bank and
reporting.
statistical agency doing honest reporting? That is, I think, a question he's posing to anybody, any one of us here. Man, he was busy today. Mr. Piper, thank you for your comments and participation. I like these questions and statements. So the issue of people not utilizing the banking system goes beyond corruption. You need a reliable middle class that will open companies and other investments. Where is the middle? Where is the middle class? He said, "What country are we building when about 200,000 Liberians have plunged into poverty in the last 10 years?" So God help us. And I think this other person is from YouTube. Um, I think he's always follower every time we come on here on Saturday. Actual factual. Hopefully you'll be able to change his name one day. He said, I would think that the collateral system will help greatly. I would think that the collateral system will help greatly. And then he or she says again, are there qualified appraisal? Oh, this is a great question. Appraisal in Liberia. I think he mean if you're giving collateral system, as a collateral, whether it be a house or your vehicle or whatever it is. Do we
But
have?
hey, Gabriel, if you allow me,
Yeah.
let's speak. We do have that's the current system now in
Hmm.
Liberia, collateral,
Hmm.
and some businesses, some people do not have collateral,
Hmm.
but are very well meaning. So,
Hmm.
the example I gave, I bought a couple of $100,000 house here
Hmm.
without money
Hmm.
in America.
Hmm.
All I had was a very stable job from a very reputable company.
Hmm.
What can we do other than collateral? How can Liberians build credit
But Jimmy, you
worthiness?
also have credit too now.
Yes, and you have a
Yeah, but
reputable job.
I had just gotten here though.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
really?
wasn't here for a long time. I got here in '95, and I bought a house in 2000. So
But at 5 years
that's
now,
only
you
5
build
years.
credit. You could
Yeah.
build credit in 5 years.
I did have
I
some
bought I,
credit.
I bought my first house in 3 years, so I built credit in 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did have some credit, but I don't believe they would give me a couple of $100,000 without putting 5 cents down.
Yeah.
Not even a deposit.
That's what Gabriel was saying. This financial system working.
Of course, it was with the
Mhm.
credit union. But what I'm saying is, we need other means besides just that Liberians can build their credit.
Hmm.
You see, and so that they will be able to get. That's one of the main things that thwart Liberian business. They say they can't get loans, and well, they say
Hmm.
you can't get loans because you guys don't pay back. What can we do to change that scenario
Yeah.
that make Liberians more credit worthy? What can we do? And this is why I'm saying we need other methods that a Liberian can follow, you know, that will
Hmm.
build that credit worthiness, even if they don't have property
No, I agree.
collateral.
Yeah. So I think
Let
you
me
have.
let me let me look at Edison Pajibo, what he's writing down there in. Uh, if I repeat that in Liberia, when politicians present a budget and economic policy statement, they should
Okay.
also add a financial management law or constitution instrument or legislative instrument that will audit the lifestyle of government official before and after. Yes, you see, that's why I continue to say that things do exist in Liberia. So the way Edison put it, there are two or three different facets of government that handles that. Yes, the budget process by the time the legislative hear on the budget and approve the budget before it goes to the president for signature, there's a legislative instrument that goes along with it that calls for different things, right? So the budget is a law. Now, if you're talking about audit before and after, there is the Liberal Anti-Corruption Commission in collaboration with other entities that they do what we call the asset declaration.
Mm-hmm.
So the law is such that before you are appointed, when you are appointed, you declare your asset. And then after every 3 years, you're supposed to declare your asset again. If you are appointed to a new position, if you're appointed to Ministry X or Department X, as long as you are appointed official, that means from assistant minister up to a minister and heads of other agencies and their deputies, you have to declare your asset. If you are changed from one position to the other, or you're moving from one institution to the other, you also have to declare your asset, in as much as when you're staying in the same position for a continuity of 3 years, you redeclare your asset. And LACC, as the custodian of those things, has to do the asset verification for year in, year out. And if they are discrepancy, they bring it to book. And if some of that, and they do investigation, if some of that amount to profiteering on government project or corruption, then they do the investigation and they might send you to court. Now they used to be through the Ministry of Justice, and if the Ministry of Justice did not act for 90 days, then they can go to court. But now the law has been changed so that they giving the LACC direct prosecutorial power to go to court. So these stuff are there. Again, we are talking about implementation, enforcement, putting the right people in the places,
Exactly.
and interfering with them and allowing them to do their jobs.
Exactly. I agree with you. I agree with you. We have, like, everything we talk about now. There's books on the law. There's regulations. There's everything. Is that we think the right thing, but like we just happen to always we just put these people in place that you know that I don't know if there's some kind of disease that you can be upright, but the moment you get into government power, you just become this pompous people. Nobody follow law. I don't know. People pick your pockets or put. You're easily corruptible. You become easily corruptible. Nobody follows the law. They're on the books, but nobody implements them. So that's it goes to speak about what we were saying earlier. That, like you said, those things are there, but you know, I think you had a personal story one time about the FIU, how you guys will have these cases, but when you go to to prosecute them, somebody above you will make sure that that case doesn't go anywhere. Like why would you have somebody do all that work if they can prosecute somebody? You know.
Yeah, even with the general auditing and work, they have a whole process at the national legislature where they have a structure there where when these reports come, when they send copies to integrity institution, especially they send copies to the Liberal Anti-Corruption Commission, and they send copies to the legislative, but I forgot how it's called. And they analyze this report and see whether they're factual things. They really do the work. There's a secretariat there that was formed as part of the international community under the legislature. And they do their work, and I say this because I interacted with them, and they do their work to the extent that they can flush out things that are realistic and things that are not realistic, and they write you and they have a public hearing. The legislature is supposed to hear that, and if people are found culpable, they are recommended to the president for either they are reprimanded. Reprimand could be a tip on the finger and say, "My man, don't do this again," even though that does not amount to anything, but don't do it again. It can amount to you being fired or suspended. It can amount to you being sent to court, and then it can amount to, if the court found you guilty, you can go to jail. So, I mean, there are structures that are there. One of the things that may not be in the book is the issue of assumed wealth. So when you're talking about personality profiles and stuff like that, but there is another institution's law that sort of takes care of that in another way, and that's the financial intelligence unit that sort of back the LACC up or other institution up, because its law has some of that embedded into its law. So those processes are going. So I mean, the stuff is there in Liberia. I mean, yes, as again, no system is perfect. It's subject to amendment and changes and advancement. But we have a lot of stuff going on in Liberia. But it's again, like I said, it's
Yeah.
implementation.
All right.
Yeah,
So
But
yeah, long, my friends.
I'd like to ask you one question before you leave, Alex,
Mhm.
because you may have seen something like this. It is apparent that sometimes, um, if you want to be the whistleblower, if you want to do your work properly, there was
Mhm.
talk about the auditors that mysteriously got missing or met their fate. What are the scenarios that you can describe to us that would deter people from being a whistleblower or doing the right thing in Liberia?
So there's also, as part of that law, the asset declaration and other laws that the LACC administer and other institutions, whether it be a GSC or be it the FIU or be it the IAA, there is a whole whistleblower protection law, right, to protect the identity of whistleblower and to protect their security. So, and then there are, the last time I checked, the LACC had numbers that people could call and report stuff, and even during certain investigation that we are conducting whilst we're in Liberia, people were, for example, they were afraid and they were given the confidence that yes, they could report, their identity could be protected, and they could even speak in camera. So those things are there. They only need to be implemented. That's all. And I mean, with a whistleblower thing is in terms of the protection is not perfect in its own sense, even in the modern world, because we know what happened even in America with people coming up to speak against a former president and stuff like that, and what happened. But um, to the good of it is available.
yeah. Okay. So I don't know if we should keep going with these. I think this is
So
somebody.
let's talk about the confidence in the banking system. But let me say hello
Yeah.
to Jackson there. He was saying hi to me. Yeah, long time, my friend.
Yeah.
I've been around, but currently I just forced myself to be on this station. I'm not too well. I had a situation on my shoulder, um, and then it was dealt with by the hospital people. So I'm still in pains, but I'm here.
You said you dealt with it at JFK. Is that what you said?
I said the hospital people dealt with it
Oh, okay.
in the US.
I think you said you went to JFK. I said, wow.
I could go to JFK. I was in Liberia. I could go to JFK.
I think they went to JFK. I said, man, something is happening. Miracles. Um, so I think this is hopefully, yeah, this will be the last thing we talk about. So what we want to talk about is the confidence level in our banking system. What is the level of confidence within our banking system? And I think to some way or another, we've talked about this in terms of we highlighted certain things. We talked about the loan, the deposit ratio, the regulations, the safety, the transparency, security. Jimmy talked about the freedom to move money around. Alex talks about accountability, and all of those things. Those are some of the tenets of having a confidence within the banking system. But Alex, I want to pose this question to you from what you know about, and I, I'm sure there's some level of confidentiality you can share here, but to what level do you think our banking system is confident? And please, if you can speak to that, I will understand as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Gabriel, you're right. I can speak to certain things to the extent I can speak to it, and I know I have to protect my
Yeah.
confidentiality and stuff like that. But um, everywhere in the world,
Hmm.
be it in the remotest village or be it in the most advanced area,
Hmm.
uh, your ability to get your money when you even give it to somebody to keep I gave my money to Jimmy and said, my man, I want to use the money here, so I give it to you. Please
Mhm.
hold it for me, keep it for me, because I trust you. If Jimmy does not give me my money back when I need it, and he give me a run around, and it ends up into confusion and this and that, that
Mhm.
is a problem. When I
Yep.
put my money in a susu club, it's time for me to, as the people say, time for me to eat in a susu, and I can't eat, then it's a problem, right? So it's the same
Mhm.
way if you put your money into the bank where you're supposed to save your money, or it's a demand deposit account where a checking account where you have access to your money anytime. That money is used to turn around for the bank to make money. And if I don't get it back the time I'm supposed to get it back, and you start giving me excuses about system down or no money in the bank, and then especially when Susu Club people and different informal sector financial system people and semi formal put their money into the bank and they're not getting. And these are large group of people and business people. Small businesses, large businesses put their money into the bank and they're not getting it back the time they want it,
Mhm.
especially over the season where they order in the import goods mostly. Then it becomes a problem. It makes you want to go back to the old days where you put your money under the mattress, or where the people will hold their money
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and then distribute it to themselves when they need it. So it creates
Mhm.
a confidence. And then when you go to the bank with all this, you're talking about electronic banking, you're talking about this. There's some form of electronic banking that has been achieved in Liberia. But when you go to the ATM and you can't get your money, especially when you come from abroad and you
Mhm.
want to access your foreign account, and it creates confidence crisis in the bank to the extent that you don't want to put your money there. But the question that I want to ask you back is,
Mhm.
you're working in the banking system, George, Gabriel. What are some of the things why those things will happen, that the people will not want, they will not be able to give the depositors their money back, which creates this confidence crisis?
So, Jimmy, you want to come in before I take a stab at that?
No, go right ahead
Okay.
because I asked
So,
similar question.
yeah. So, from a banking's perspective, and again, uh, I, as I said, I usually compare the banking law in Liberia to what we have here. They are tit for tat, the exact same thing. We operate on the fractional reserve system here. Liberia do too. Um, every bank's supposed to have what we call loan to deposit ratio. Liberia is supposed to. We have reserve ratio. Uh, the every bank files its financial report to its regulatory body. In our case, in Liberia, to the central banks. Over here is to, depending how big you are, it could be to the OCC. If you are, I think, over 100 billion to the OCC, and the Federal Reserve and insurance, uh, the FDIC. If you are below that level, it's at the state regulatory body level, right? Which still all of those guys still report the to those guys to the top. So in our case, it's the same. The biggest, I think, confident thing that usually impacts banks are perfect. What is happening right now with the banking sector, right? Risk, right? If you put, as I say, if I put money in a bank, if even if a dollar or so, I should be able to access that dollar when I need it, right? And this is why one of the biggest things that get tested is what we call the loan to deposit ratio. So if you have loans out to the amount of deposit you're supposed to have, it's over 50% should be perfect, right? So in our case, maybe those things don't get tested. In our case, if you look at Liberia, I would say the easiest thing to look at is what I always like to refer people to, like the layman. Hey, all of us took accounting classes, or even if you didn't do finance, you can go to the balance sheet and look at the assets and the liability. How much asset does this bank have compared to this liability? You can also look at the what we call the liquidity. How much are they making? And this is why every bank in any country focuses on getting deposit because it's a constant vehicle. That's money you always need because you're always lending money out. You always also want to have money coming in. This is why when you go to banks, let's say you or Jimmy have a business. If I go to you and say, hey, I'm making a $1 million loan to you or Jimmy, one of the requirements that banks usually do that you'll see in their contract is, hey, part of this requirement is Jimmy, if I lend you this money, your operating account, you have to hold it here. Or I will solicit some kind of deposits from you. I will say, hey, as a part of wanting to expand this kind of relationship with you, I would like to have your deposit relationship with us, right? That is not to say I'm forcing you to do that, but that is a way because I know I'm giving you this money to build that relationship, to deepen your relationship. So that means I'm not just giving you this loan. I want you to have all your banking system with me. But most importantly, what I'm focusing on is your deposit relationship because I want as a business that I'm able to lend 1 million to. I know you have a lot of money coming in, you have a lot of deposit coming in, and if I can get that, that will be in a way to keep my deposit ratio at the level that I needed to be will have. So it's a perpetual system that banks use. This is why they have relationship managers, they have branch managers, they have everywhere you go, everybody focus on this thing. Um, in terms of confidence within our banking system, I would say this and I will end. I don't think the way we do banking in Liberia, it's how other people do banking around the world. The way we do banking in Liberia, and this is, I always tell this to people. This is why one of my goals is to buy a bank one day or start one right in Liberia because I would like to change the way we do banking in Liberia, revolutionize it, right? And the reason being is because we are just what we call trade, right? We don't take risks. We don't lend to people. We don't lend as we're supposed to, right? If we were lending as we're supposed to, there's money in Liberia. You will see maybe one bank will just come and take over completely, and within a matter of 5 to 10 years, they become the most dominant bank. But no banking system, no banking uh, no company, no bank is actually dominant within at least from a Liberian standpoint, is dominant within our economy. So maybe I kind of being long-winded here, but the way we do banking in Liberia within itself in terms of how to get deposit to strengthen our loan to deposit ratio is not how banking is actually done, and most importantly, the banks are undercapitalized, and because of that, this is why when you put money in there, sometimes you go take the money out. They say, "Hey, we're out of money." What bank's supposed to tell you that? The moment a bank tell you that they're out of money here in this country, everybody will go do a bank run on it, and that will cause it to fail, right? But we can do that in Liberia because most people, we just accept it as a norm, even though that is a bank telling you that, hey, we do not have money. We have to wait again until people make deposit and you can come back tomorrow. So we'll be able to give you that money. We continue to accept this. But the banks in our countries are undercapitalized, and I don't think they're rightly regulated in terms of monitoring their loan to deposit ratio. But we just accept this as, hey, this is something that's only happening in Liberia, and we just learn to deal with it. You go to the bank, somebody tell you, we don't have money today. There's some easy thing to do is, oh, I will come back tomorrow, they'll have money. So the next question you're asking them, oh, when I come back, will you guys have money, or should I go to another branch? But that's a bank telling you that they failed, that hey, we don't have money. A bank tell you that they don't have money. That's they tell you that they're insolvent. You know. But I will leave it on that note, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have within our banking system. Yeah, Jimmy, you say you had a question,
So okay, I understand what you're saying.
right?
The reserve to capital ratio, but like I said, the IB bank that I
Yes.
bank with, they have found a way to insulate themselves from that. They always have money, thousands, and
Mm-hmm,
I'm talking about several thousands of dollars that they can give
mm-hmm,
it to you any day you go for it.
mm-hmm.
So, well, how you think they're able to do that and other banks can't?
So I think for IB Bank, I don't think that's a bank that I've looked at, but I've paid heavy attention to LBDI. But if they were able to
Mhm.
circumvent that, constantly being out of money, but being for them to have liquidity to the level that other banks don't. I think they foc- I think they focus on the higher end of you know how do you call it, high network people or middle income and high network people, like people like yourself, right? Where you put your money in, a guy like you, maybe you'll not always want to take the money out, so they target people like you. And so, perfect example, Fresh Republic, that's all they did. They were like what we call in the banking world the boys, the old boys club. They targeted high net worth people. These people, when it come to having money, they were the A factor in the banking sector, right? So I believe this is the same strategy, that because every bank has what we call the risk appetite, right? I can operate a bank in Liberia. I can say, you know what? I don't care that people say that they don't, Liberian people don't pay back money. I'm now going to lend to Liberia. I'm going to lend to a very specific group of people because, from my board and our strategies perspective, this is the appetite that we want to take. This is the approach that we want to take. And we know by doing that is going to serve our investors well, because we don't want to take too much risk. We don't want to be too exposed to that level of risk. So we're going to target the diaspora people that have enough money to deposit. We're going to lend to them because they have a lot of money compared to the average Liberian in Liberia. I believe that's the level of strategy that IB Bank is taking. And I mean, that's the only, either that or they have what we call a very effective uh, relationship building, because that's what it's all about. Relationship building, what we call bankers, right? People that know how to go and get out and get deposits, which goes back to the exact same thing that I was saying. People that can come out and say, hey, I'm a relationship banker at IB Bank. I you know I know you just came into this country. What are you like? What are you trying to do in this country? We're one of the biggest bank in the country. I would like for you to bank with us. These are the service, like people that know how to sell the service to the right target market people. And I think this is exactly, maybe that's what IB Bank is doing. And that's why they're succeeding at that they're able to have that level of, liquidity in them. Again, every bank has a risk appetite. You just have to know how to play into yours to make your bank competitive. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's no more questions, Alex, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Um, I, I, I think for me, I think that's, I don't know if you guys have any more to add to that. But that will, I don't think I have any more to add to that. Uh, that question in terms of the confidence level within the banking system. Uh, did you
Yeah,
guys
I,
want
I,
to
I
think
wanted
more
to
about it?
ask Jimmy. He was talking about a point where IB, a specific bank, he mentioned a specific bank
Mhm.
that did not fall into that was able to give the depositor his money as compared to the other 8 or 9 banks. Maybe you're saying that because you probably know that it happened and you know why it happened. So maybe I want to ask you, I want to pose that question to you.
Hmm.
Because how one bank among 9 or 10 of them
Okay.
was
It's
able to
doing
do that.
right.
Uh-huh. So let me get the question again.
How
So
one bank among the 9 or 10 banks
10
was
banks.
able
Yeah.
to give its depositors his money as compared to the other banks. When was that
Exactly.
what
I meant to. Very good. I asked Puni. He's one of the top ranking officers of the bank. His name is Cornelius Puni. And he the one. In fact, it was a Lebanese guy who told me about this bank. And then I talked to Kapuni, who was one of the officers there, and he said, "Oh, we always have the money." And I put thousands of dollars in the bank, and anytime you get it. So I wanted to ask you, how did they do it? How did they insulate themselves from, you know, the liquidity issue? And we're talking
Hmm.
specifically of um, foreign money, foreign capital.
Yeah.
And I would get back to him, and I will
Yeah.
have a better answer. because I think that every bank in Liberia could learn from that. You know,
Yeah.
uh, I don't really know, like you were saying, Gabriel, if they were, you know, discriminating against lesser capable people.
Mhm,
I think if once you put your deposit in there,
mhm.
you know, they were protected. And
Okay.
I know this as a fact because I just sent what $27,000 to relatives.
Mhm,
Somebody passed, and that was their insurance money, and they were able to go to the bank, open an account, and we wired the money directly into their account. So
yeah.
I don't know if they're distinct, they discriminate against that. But
Yeah.
I will get back to you, Alex, that there is, they must be doing something different, and we
Yeah.
need to identify that and see how other banks can benefit from this practice.
And you said
Because
you heard that from
I
I'll
would
get
also
back to
tell you
you.
that I stay bank in Liberia, and I have access to my funds with another bank. I won't call the bank name, but I have access to
Okay.
my my account online, even in the United States. And when I want to send money to people
Yeah.
for themselves or for projects, I have access to that money. So
Mhm.
that's another bank. That's why I was wondering. Um, and then I had a situation where there are times I need the money, especially those crunch time. I didn't have
Hmm.
access to that money, so um, I'm also a customer of IB, but I don't. I use another bank for transactional activities. But so I was wondering whether you're sort of sort of advertising for IB here to me. So I wanted to understand that.
I was just going to say
No,
that maybe we should stop promoting IB if they're that good. Hey, it's a
Yeah.
Liberian owned bank.
They
Why
gotta,
not?
they gotta get FOL some money for that kind of statement you're making, my friend.
I'm telling you.
Hey, maybe you should reach out to your guys. Say we're promoting your bank. What do you guys do for marketing?
They gotta pay
To,
FOL some money.
yeah, Tokpa Kwase Koi. He said IB Bank is called the Bank of Stephen Cashin and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. So maybe.
Oh,
You get in trouble.
unraveled, unraveled. Hey, somebody always knows something that we don't know. And whenever there's a mystery, there's somebody that has it figured out.
That's
Always,
right.
always.
So, Jimmy, Tukpa is throwing
Oh,
a challenge to you.
he is right.
How do
You know
you
what?
unravel that?
Know what? He is right. And this is I could have picked up on this. This is something Stephen Cashin, I did invested 20 million into IB Bank.
Give
20
I beg
million.
you, the people feel getting a free advertisement. Don't cost 40.
No, I'm serious. He invested 20 million into IB Bank. He also invested in Data Bank in Ghana, the Data Bank. I don't know if you heard about it.
Yeah, data
So he
bank. I
invested 20
heard.
million into IB Bank. This is probably why they are very capitalized compared to other bank. Ah, I should have picked up on it. Yes, yeah, yeah. That was I think in was it
So,
2010? I think 2010. Yeah, I think back in
Emmanuel
2010.
Jackson said we should send a bill to IB Bank for to compensate FOL.
Yeah, we need to kind of build there.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But there we go. That's why they're always capitalized. That's why they are always capitalized. Here we go. I got it figured out. And I was going to ask you because
Mhm.
there's always answers in what people say. You said you were introduced to them by Lebanese, right? That mean probably that's why
Yes,
all the
yes.
Lebanese bank. Maybe that's why the bank that all of them use. So they refer you to the bank. This is where we keep our money. And if all of them keep that money, that we know they have a big control over the economy. So there's that bank is well, banks with them. So um but what's his name? Toba, how you say it? Kwa or Quia? Kwa?
Quite,
I think it's Kwewu,
quite,
actually.
Well, thank
quite.
you, my man. Thank you. Thank you for helping us. Thank you. As I said, wherever there's mystery, You just gotta look around.
But
Someone
he
always
has
have a
another
question
comment
to
there.
answer.
You can
Yeah.
highlight that comment. He has a
He
comment
said
about the headquarters and
IB
stuff.
Bank is whoa. It's headquartered in DC with branches in Accra, Monrovia, and Dakar, Senegal. Man, somebody is well researched here. Um, I will not doubt the Accra part because the guy who invested 20 million in there, he's has another bank in Ghana as well. At the same time, he invested that 20 million in IB Bank. He invested in Data Bank as well. He also
Yeah,
has
but
the
Gabriel,
Pan
let's
African.
let's let's do a comparison. I hate
Right.
to mention banks, specific banks, but let's do a comparison here, for the sake of the comment I'm about to make. There is the uh, Echo Bank, that is a multi West African or whatever African
It's a Pan African.
multinational.
Yeah. Right.
There is the UBS, that is
UBA.
also
Right.
a West African or African multinational bank with branches in New York
Yeah.
and London and things like that. So
Dubai. Yeah.
are you saying that because IB has its headquarters in DC and they have branches in these three areas, so
Mhm.
they are more liquid than the other banks, and
No.
that is why during the time the money crunch in Liberia, that is why they were able to, or because an individual who you just mentioned put in $20 million, is that the reason?
I
Or
think
because as somebody purported to say, said that two individuals are involved.
mhm.
I'm
So.
being
I
careful
think
with the statement because I
the
don't like to say things like that, especially when people's,
for me,
yeah.
I have nobody can come after me. Come after me. That's what are you gonna do? And I would say this. I think the way you have to look at the way banks are structured now. So UBA, you would say UBA is well capitalized. Like you mentioned, they have offices in London, New York, Dubai. They just opened one in Dubai. They have pretty much offices in 14 African countries and growing. So, but however, the way they're structured, they are incorporated within the country, so they are separate entities. So the liquidity within the ones in Ghana or Nigeria won't be the same as the one in Liberia, right? So if the ones in Liberia isn't well capitalized, it's because of their separate entity run by the team in in Liberia. Um, Different from the one in Dubai, Washington D.C., London, Nigeria, and all those other African countries. So that's the reason why if we have liquidity problem with UBA, the same thing with IB Bank. IB Bank, I think that could be the factor that differentiates them from everybody. And the reason why I say that is if I invested 20 million within that company, I have a level of exposure to them. I have interest in them, right? Even if they're having liquidity problem and I know they're profitable, or if they're profitable in terms of my initial investment in them, I will always put money in there to make sure they continue to operate because I know I'm benefiting from that. And this guy is I forgot his network. He has another what we call Pan African uh venture capital, which is has invested heavily in other African countries. So his pocket is deep to say the least. Stephen Cash's pocket is deep. He's an Egyptian, I think, American guy, um, right out of DC here too. So no wonder why
Yeah,
IB
but
Bank has a
Gabriel, I don't think he will be building the bank out profusely, or he'll just be throwing, and putting money in there I don't know which investors does that. That will just put money in there when things have not been declared and stuff like that, like shares, um, uh, 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 call for additional money for shares holdership and stuff like that. But I do know that the multinational banks, there's something in Liberia called the local banks and the other banks, the ones that I just mentioned, the
yeah,
West African multinational bank,
right.
which had more financial wherewithal because of their their locations and because of their parent companies and things like that. And then even when it came to transfer, international transfer back and forth, they had
Mhm.
more advantage in sort of leveraging their stuff, so that even other banks, when we had a crisis with the corresponding bank situation in Liberia at one point, these banks were well positioned to even help other quote unquote local bank to conduct their transfers.
Mhm.
So I again I am a little tired on because of my previous assignment. So
Mhm.
but you we are talking about reasons why, according to what Jimmy said, that IB was able to service its customers in terms of giving them money when other banks were not. But I think that these banks that I just mentioned were
Mhm.
also well positioned because of their presence. But I think it's beyond something else that I need to understand. But again, different
Yeah.
topic, different day.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw
Um,
it out there. Yeah.
no, I agree, and I think it's you're right. You can't just he can't just be pumping money into it, but I think there's it's heavily backed, to say the least. Um, it's heavily backed, and that could be, as I said, that could be the reason why they're always liquid. It's funny, and I keep saying this now. Everything's starting to make sense. I research LBDI balance sheet heavily. I think in 2018 I started, and I know they were at one point they were highly leveraged bank, and to the point that if people could rebalance sheet very well, they would have done a bank run on it. Um, and I went to go look. I went to go because LBDI and IB Bank are the two major banks that is Liberian owned. So I went to go look for what is it? IV Bank's balance sheet, financial statement. That guy could not find that thing, my man. But that's another story for another time. Um, but yeah, that could be because of how it's backed, who's back, who backs it. I will when Jimmy said that in terms of how solid they were. The next question I was going to ask Jimmy is, hey, are they open to any investors? You know, so when you talk to your guy, ask him what are they're open to any more investors, because I would like to explore that first. In order to do that, I would like to look at their balance sheet first, the financial statement, before I even make any. But that's something I would definitely like to explore. Uh,
I'll
yeah,
do that.
yeah, um, yeah. So this guy, man, this guy, who is this guy? Now I'm curious. I want to know this guy.
I think we're doing the 2 hour mark, but we already
Yeah, yeah,
crossed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And this guy says Stephen, I believe, is an investor in Oris Mining. Now I got to go look into that. But I think that brings us to the end of this discussion for today. But before we leave, I wanted to hear you guys, maybe parting comments or any statement you would like to make about today's topic. It could be, you can take it from any angle. And I want to hear you guys' parting statement.
Okay, let me say this. We know that one of the pivotal or the pillars of a capitalist economy is the lending sector, the banks.
Mhm.
And if we're going to develop a middle economy, in where we can see
Actually have the wrong focus.
individuals.
We're focused on things
I'm
like
sorry.
how much more can I save?
We see individuals coming up to a middle class level. We're going to have to improve our banking sector, and that's why I really like the topic, because it is crucial and it's pivotal that you have a solid banking sector, a financial sector that is
Mhm.
able to finance projects, finance businesses, and other
Mhm.
ventures. Um, if if we don't, that's one of the things we have to straighten out if we're going to actually become a more robust economy. and that will. So we've identified that we will
Yeah.
need less government meddling and more um, rules and transparency.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Jimmy. Alex.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, I always say that let's continue to do what we're doing. I have confidence in a country Liberia, always, and I think things could improve.
Mhm.
We just need the right people. We just need visionary, selfless people that will lead us in the right direction. That's so. But I know that we have there's some things things we build in Liberia, and we can only improve on it like the same way other countries did. We can improve on it once we have the right people in the right places.
Yeah. And I maybe actually I want to take a maybe the the way I open, I want to take a maybe a little bit of positive spin. Um, I think we are when you call what we call a young financial system. We're young and we're very, compared to other financial system in terms of what we're trying to build. It's new, it's young, and the beauty, there's a gift and a curse. The gift is that because we're young, we are able to look at the pitfalls of other financial systems, what they did wrong, and be able to dodge those pitfalls and be able to build a perfect, financial system that we, not just us can be proud of as a country in the region, but the world can look at us and say, man, this country built a great financial system that is able to get them to where they are now if we were to get to a level. And the curse part of that is that, because we're young, you know, we may not always want to learn from based on our hubris. We may not always want to learn from the other old system that exists. We might, as we often hear people saying is that, oh, things are different in Liberia than other country. You can't do in Liberia what you do in other country. But I mean, you can say that for most things, but the financial system as we have it, it needs to function the way every other financial system is functioning, or maybe even better, in order to get us there. So that's the spin I want to take on it. The other spin I want to take on that is that, as I think I said this earlier, but maybe I want to expand on this. We can build to a level. You can come in, bring a president, bring an administration in, and have the best administration and grow our economy to a level. You can come in and start seeing people benefiting from the economy. That will only grow to a certain level before you plateau. Now, if you want, when I mean plateau, I mean from a there's the financial system, the world, not the financial system, but the world system, the economy, the way they're looked at. There's the frontier, the emerging market, and the developed economy. Again, the frontier, emerging, and developed. Currently, we're at the bottom, which is the frontier market, right? The frontier market, if you do what you can start putting yourself up, setting yourself up to build that foundation to get to the middle emerging market. Emerging market meaning you have a great middle income society and you're now looking to put yourself in a trajectory to become an advanced society. Now, as I said before, if we put in the right people, you might have the best administration that come in and say, we see things start picking up. You will grow the economy. Maybe you have a $2 billion budget. Things will start picking up, investors coming into the country. But if you want to now put yourself in the trajectory to get to the middle income or emerging market level, you have to now focus on your financial system. You will not be able to get there unless you build that system to the way that people can trust within the country, the international community can trust, investors from around the world can trust, and now be able to help, bring investment beyond to able to help you to be able to get to that emerging market. And as I said before, this is what Rwanda is currently doing. They've plateaued at that level now. They're now looking at how they can build to an emerging market level. And this is how they're starting with the airport, $2 billion that is funded by the Saudi, and that is going to open up a level of investment along with their financial system that they're building. So contrary to what is happening in our financial system, I know there's a lot of challenges that we talked about earlier. We still have a lot to learn, and we still have a lot to do to get to, to get it to perfect it to the level that people in the diaspora can trust and people locally can trust. To have Mamusu take her money from under the mattress and start putting it in the banking system, and that money being used to build companies, lend to other businesses in the country. So uh, that's what I want to leave it. And
Yeah,
again,
Gabriel, before you close that quickly, there, I know we're closing, but just I just bumped into a story here, and on a positive note,
mhm,
uh, Liberia replaces Panama as the world's largest flag in terms of tonnage.
yeah,
Um, so for the first time in 30 years, Panama is no longer the world's largest ship registry. At some point 30 years ago, Liberia was the largest the country that was flag. That means your country flag. A lot of ships,
Flag.
international ship. Yeah,
They call them
flag,
flags of convenience.
flag of convenience.
yeah,
But 30 years ago, Panama took over, and just now and
we
the story was
overtook them.
reported yesterday, American Nation. So I don't know the details, what caused that, but this is just the story. But it's a positive news to close with for Liberia.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree, and that means more money in for the current administration. Because we get a percentage of
Yeah.
those ships that fly our flags. Yeah, yeah. Any more thoughts, comments? No.
Yeah, but I think that as I was reading down the line, some countries suffer it because of the war in Ukraine. So
Hmm.
countries like Malta and Cyprus, who are in that area, uh, you know, they lost other countries kind of fled. So the countries move. So the
Oh, so
countries
those
move to
countries
Liberia.
switch over to
So that's some of the
Liberia.
things I read. So looking at the list of the top 30 flags, the big losers in the year to date have been Malta and Cyprus,
Mm,
likely as a result of Russia's war in Ukraine, while the flag that has grown the most in percentage term by some distance has been Germany, a nation. So some of that maybe some of that thing flow
yeah,
to Liberia, and maybe Liberia was strategically positioned to win some of that flag over.
that's good. That's good news. That's great. I love it. That's something positive. That's very, very, very,
Somebody,
very, very, very.
somebody, somebody bad news that was good news. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Clap,
All right.
you know.
Again, wherever
Your
you
clap
are,
for
guys,
Liberia, do something.
go ahead. We're listening.
Yeah, I feel clapping for Liberia, but
But I thought you were singing a song.
I feel clap for
Uh,
Liberia, do something. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Again, wherever you are, thank you for joining us. For those who share the comments, we really enjoy your comment, and this is why sometimes I love doing this show, because always there's something you have to you learn from the audience, and thank you for your comments, your participation in the topic today. I know, as we always say, we think we're subject matters expert on these things, but hey, um, it's one thing my manager always tells me is that you teach, you learn by teaching as well. So, even though we think we're having the discussion, we also learn from you in the process of as well. So, thank you for joining us. I know many of you may have you may disagree with some of the comments we make, and that's the beauty of what I like to call the advancement of knowledge, is the collision of thoughts, right? And so thank you, and I hope you were able to take away something from us as well. Again, Jimmy, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you can be a regular on here every now and then. When I'm coming out, maybe I will send you the link. Hopefully you can join
Okay.
us. I really enjoy your participation here today. Alex, as I always said, thank you. Hopefully your arm heal fast enough to be joining us regularly. And if you guys don't have anything else, as we always say, there's,
Yeah, I
you
got I
know,
got 1 more month into full recovery, my man.
you know what I would do? The moment you
I'm
almost
enjoying
close to it,
I'm enjoying my sabbatical on that.
you know what I would do? The moment you close the recovery, I would tell Samuel to again, you can punch you in your arm. I said, I mean, he's getting well. Come, get him one more time. Come get him with tea.
I'll
Guys, thank you for joining
take
us.
you.
Thank you for joining us. Wherever you are, as we like to say, there's one thing that is always true, and is that we're all Liberians, regardless of whether you agree with what we're saying or whether you disagree. And that is the common denominator. And we will leave you with that song and see you next Saturday at the very same time next Saturday. Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank
We
you.
are Liberians. Liberia is our home.